Welcome to the film cast review of Longlegs, the new movie out in theaters right now, written and directed by Osgood Perkins. I'm going to read the plot summary from the internet. FBI agent Lee Harker is assigned to an unsolved serial killer case that takes an unexpected turn, revealing evidence of the occult. Harker must stop the killer before he strikes again. End quote. Devindra Hardawar, I don't know about you, but I had virtually no expectations of this going into this movie.
Really? Okay.
I hadn't really seen a lot of Osgood Perkins movies. I'd heard the movie had a very unsettling atmosphere,
Mhm.
but that's about it. I didn't really know anything about what this movie was about or how it would be about it. But yeah, what was your anticipation? What did you think of the movie overall?
I think mainly going into it is, I had seen Osgood Perkins' movie, I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. I
Hmm.
actually talked about it several years ago, and that movie is like it's kind of a weird slow burn ghost story about a ghost slowly decaying over time, and it kinda left a mark on me just in terms of, like, aesthetically. I thought it was really beautiful and also just really original in terms of what it was trying to say. But it really just made it clear that this is a guy who understands how to set up a feeling, an aura, an environment, a mood for his types of movies. And I think this movie certainly captures a lot of that. I also watched that movie my first time in Savannah in like a very old townhouse, and like to watch a creepy old ghost story in a town that is known for being very, very, very creepy. I think like it clicked with me how much he got the vibe right. So I was anticipating this because I think he's like a talented guy. And also, I heard Michael Monroe's in it. I heard Mr. Nicolas Cage is in it. I had like, that's enough. And I had seen, I've seen all the marketing leading up into this, but after a while, I sort of just tuned it out because I feel like just the anticipation of like, Michael Monroe as an FBI agent, sort of going after, trying to solve a series of murders. I feel like that was enough for me. And have to say, I love this movie. It is very specifically, almost like scarily specifically targeted at my wheelhouse, It's a very 90s set thing at a time where there were a lot of things in the 90s about the FBI being involved in weird stuff, right? Like I'm an X-Files kid. I was an X-Files obsessive, but also Twin Peaks has a lot of that as well. Um I love just like that. The 90s procedural elements are in here too. One thing I had no clue of going into this movie is that the supernatural does play more of a role than you'd expect. I thought this would be like a straight up serial killer movie, and it goes a little more than that. And I was honestly clapping early on when it set up certain things about these characters. I was like, "Oh, it's actually cool that we're doing this because that makes it different." I think this movie's fantastic. It's a great mood. It captures a very specific creepy vibe. Micah Monroe's amazing. Nicolas Cage is like doing things which I think if you take them out of context of this movie, they just look silly and it's hard to buy. And I think a lot of people watching this movie just kind of felt that about this character, but also who else would do what he is doing? Like he is just taking crazy, a little bit of crazy swings with this. I think Oz Perkins has a great eye for framing scenes and for creating mood and for creating tension. And I see people describing this movie as slow, and I honestly did not feel that at all, especially compared to something like I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, which is a very, very slow burn horror movie. This just feels like we're always on to the next thing. Maybe some scenes may take longer. Maybe you're watching them investigate a room with flashlights very slowly, but that sense of dread was always there. It always kept me going. I think this movie's terrific. I do think it kind of loses things a bit in the final act, and we'll talk about that. It is weird how a movie that feels so confident and bold early on can kind of make some, I think, really basic mistakes at the end when it comes to storytelling. So there's that. But yeah, I love this. Like if you liked Alan Wake and Alan Wake 2, especially if you like the X-Files stuff, this movie is capturing a lot of that and I really appreciated it.
A quick word on the aesthetics of the movie Longlegs.
Mhm.
Uh, Virtually every single shot in this movie is medium to wide angle,
Yeah.
which is a really
With
interesting way to
odd
shoot a movie.
lenses. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, almost no close-ups, basically. And so, what it does is, first of all, it situates its characters within their environment, makes them feel much smaller, makes them feel kind of like oppressed a little bit by everything around them. But also, the human eye is kind of trained to understand the normal rhythms of a film. Like we
Yeah,
cut from
yeah,
wide shot to close up, and like when you don't get that, something feels off about the movie. It ramps up the tension because you're like, mentally, subconsciously, like, when are we going to get the close up? When are we going to
yeah.
get like, and it never comes.
But
Basically,
also, you're also like, what's in the background?
yeah,
What is
yeah, yeah,
happening around? Like,
exactly,
there's always so much of the world around these
yeah.
characters. You're like, something could be happening outside the frame at any point. Yeah,
So I
And
thought
he seems to be using strange lenses too
yeah,
to
yeah,
kind of distort the image
yes,
in really
yes,
interesting ways. Yeah, it's
yeah,
all
yeah.
very unsettling.
Right, I agree. I agree. So it's really a situation where like the technique, the cinematic technique, helps to achieve kind of some of the atmospheric objectives here. Jeff Kanata, what were your thoughts on Longlegs?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on Longlegs are best summed up in the form of a limerick. Nick Cage's performance is strong. So where did this movie go wrong? It's a lot of a thing that adds up to nothing. Are anyone's legs even long?
Wow.
he's pretty tall. He's a pretty tall guy.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
I agree about the filmmaking. I agree about the atmosphere that this
Yeah.
movie creates. I think it's extraordinary. To me, this is style masking a complete lack of substance. It felt to me like I was watching the brainstorm of a movie. Someone brainstorming a really good movie, but not actually following any of the leads that they came up with. It's like throwing a bunch of spaghetti against the wall. Some of it's interesting, some of it's a little creepy, some of it's weird. Does it land and make spaghetti dinner? It does not. It does not. It's just a messy wall of spaghetti. I We'll have to get into it in spoilers, and maybe you guys disagree with me. I'm sure Devindra does, obviously, but I the, nothing adds up to anything. It is like you could remove the Nick Cage character from this movie entirely, and it wouldn't change much. And I think that's true of almost any element in this movie. There are things that are just kind of stuck in because they feel creepy. There's things that are just thrown in there, and it's like, well, what is that? Oh, no, it's just part of the weird experience you're having. Okay, if that's what we're doing, that's what we're doing. But for me, it didn't work. I appreciated very much the style of this movie, the feeling, the creepy foreboding that is consistent and constant. And I like the big chances, particularly Nick Cage is making. There's just nobody else like
yeah,
him.
yeah.
Nobody gets away with that but him. Like it's awesome that there's this one actor whose thing is to just go for it. And I dig it. And last year, one of my favorite movies of the year was, what was the one where he's bald? Oh man.
The dream movie, dream scenario.
Yeah. Dream Scenario.
Oh yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
And one of my favorite movies of the year. I
Love
think it was
that.
like 3 on my list,
Love
or
that.
maybe even higher. An incredible movie and a very grounded, naturalistic performance from him on a lot of levels. So it's like he's not only doing this, but he's kind of the only American actor that's kind of given permission to do this. It's like what Gary Oldman used to be able to do, and he's like just screaming. Like I love that we have this actor who's just kind of you tune into whatever he's doing just to see what wild choices he's making. Anyway, that's kind of a side note. But I dig what he's doing in this movie. I just wish it related to anything in a more direct way. And I kept finding myself with millions of questions, and the movie ends with such a clunk to me. I agree with what Devindra said about sort of the basic storytelling things that fall away. I don't think it follows basic storytelling at any point in the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's just mood and it's just atmosphere. And on that level, it really works as a mood piece, as a tone poem. But as a movie, for me, it didn't work. Wasn't scary. I didn't find it interesting. I honestly, I left thinking, well, that was kind of dumb. And then I laid it in bed the night after I watched it, just kind of picking it apart and going, well, that didn't make sense. And that didn't even need to be in the movie. And what the hell was that all about? And why would that person act that way? And all of it just, I kind of got angrier and angrier at it as I laid in bed, and ultimately just felt like a little resenting how much it wasted my time. That's my take.
Jeff, I do recall you did not like Alan Wake 2 at all. Was there
That's
a
true.
similarity in terms of vibe that you're just not clicking for you?
I think it's slightly different in the case of Alan Wake 2, and that game like literally screams at you. It like has jump scares, and I was like, I'm not doing this to myself. I appreciate Alan Wake 2 on a technical level as well, like this movie. So there are, I guess, similarities to be drawn. But yes, you're right. I did not complete that game, so maybe there is some thematic connection to what turns me off.
All right, I'll share a few thoughts and then we can get to spoilers. I did not like this movie very much either. I kind of am between you two, but very close to Jeff's experience. I mean, I'll start by saying that the Nicolas Cage thing did not work for me at all, unfortunately. It feels like just a bunch of it feels like they let Cage be uncaged, and that I have an enormous amount of respect for Nicolas Cage as an actor. I've seen some chatter online, people being like, he was never good, he wasn't good, and it's like, no, Nicolas Cage is a brilliant actor.
Go watch Pig. Go watch any of the acclaimed
Nicolas Cage is a brilliant actor.
Watch Moonstruck.
Not only is he a brilliant actor, not only is he a brilliant actor, he's making interesting choices at this stage of his career, and he should be saluted for that. Pig, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, Dream Scenario, like. He doesn't quote unquote have to do these movies. Like he could take the Liam Neeson route and go like direct to DVD action movies, whatever. But he's choosing to work with young up and coming directors, working with interesting directors, telling interesting stories,
producing these movies.
Yeah, producing many of these movies. So
if he's not in this movie, it does not open like this.
Yeah,
I think he brought the box office.
I don't agree with you because he was basically not in the marketing at all. Which
they
is
kept
actually
teasing,
which is very notable that he was not in the marketing. But I probably this movie wouldn't exist. I agree with that part because he was a producer on the movie and maybe he helped to raise the fact that he was attached helped to raise money for the movie. So
you could argue the fact that they did not show him in the trailer was part of the compelling. I was like, ooh, what are they hiding over there?
Maybe. Anyway, point being, his performance here did not work for me. Unfortunately, it was too out there, and it felt like somebody. It felt like very effortful, like somebody trying to scare me, as opposed to the example that kept coming up was like Heath Ledger's The Joker, where it's like, oh, that guy is genuinely unbalanced, and like we're just kind of witnessing it, as opposed to here's a performance who's trying to like do all these wild things that will like make me afraid, and it just doesn't work at all. Like if he had dialed it down like 10 notches, like that's what's more scary is like the Anthony Hopkins or Mads Mikkelsen playing Hannibal, like that's scary. Is like when they're super calm and collected and controlled. Like that's, to me, that's scary. Now other people might find the Nicolas Cage in this movie scary. It did not work for me at all, and maybe that's a personal preference.
I think it's more that it's different. Like it feels almost like as if like if Heath Ledger's Joker was more amped up, but also if Anton Chigurh was absolutely like even not calm and very collected about what he's doing.
But it's the calmness that makes him terrifying.
Like, I understand that.
The fact that you can barely hear him talk, like that's what makes him scary. And when you have somebody gesticulating wildly and trying to scare, it just comes off as it's like it has the opposite
a very
effect.
Specific thing.
Yeah, it has the opposite effect for me. So then separate than that, I think the ending of this movie just does not work at all. I think, we can talk about it as spoilers, but I'll just say that like I have read multiple explainers. I've read interviews with the director explaining the ending. And people seem to not even agree on literally what actually occurred at the end of this movie. And so at the very least, I think it was unclear. And I don't think it's like unclear in a purposeful way. I think it's just done in a way that is confusing. And that was also a problem for me. So like all that said, all the praise that Devindra gave to it for the atmosphere, I love the atmosphere in this movie. Like I thought super creepy, super unsettling, some great moments. The movie looks really beautiful. And also we haven't even talked about it, but Micah Monroe, I think, is awesome in this movie. She
also
is
making some, I think, pretty brave choices
agreed,
in terms of her performance.
Like unlike a lot of the characters she's played before, really understated, really like, oh, she's kind of barely holding it together. I thought she was great. So like, there's a lot of
There,
things.
yeah.
I don't know that I ultimately recommend this movie, but there's a lot of things that I like about it and that are praiseworthy. And so I do think that a lot of people can get a lot out of watching it, but ultimately it's just not really a movie for me. So
I think what's interesting is it is the twists on like things that we expect, right? Like what Michael Monroe is doing is so different from Jodie Foster, right? In Silence or something. Like, and where that character is like a cool, like very brave and tough and very collected in terms of what's happening. Like Michael Monroe's character can like barely like sit still. Like there's just this nervous energy about her. And I find that it was just fascinating to watch. And then when you add in what they do to that character, what that character can do, I don't know. I just found it really, really compelling. And then we didn't shout out Blair Underwood. I think this
yeah,
is a tremendous Blair
very
Underwood
solid,
performance, and
very
he's a
solid.
guy who I think doesn't typically like get enough praise
Yeah.
in projects. So yeah,
Yeah,
love
yeah.
him.
So anyway, again, it's not like I'm like this is terrible, like don't watch
Yeah.
it, but it's just like, oh, like there's
Well, you
so many
said you
cool
wouldn't
elements.
recommend it.
Yeah, the atmosphere, like the Micah Monroe, like and the most of the narrative worked for me, Devindra. Like I didn't think it was slow at
Hmm.
all. Like I thought you're right.
Yeah,
Like things lead from one thing to the next. I have no problem with the pacing. But it just ultimately doesn't really come together in a compelling way for me. And so that's why not really a fan of Longlegs,
I'm
unfortunately.
glad
But
we
yeah.
we dove into it because I feel like this is typically one of those movies where, especially if it wasn't tracking so well and didn't become such a thing, it would be a weird little object that I loved, and I tell you guys, hey, check this out. You'd never watch it. So
It's one of
here
the
you go.
biggest movies of the summer.
Yeah.
Or sorry, one of the biggest horror movies of the summer.
Hmm.
But yeah, and depending on how well, depending on whether or not it has long legs, it could actually have a chance at a top 10 status for the summer movie wager, which would be pretty incredible. So anyway,
That would be something.
yeah,
That would
yeah.
be amazing if that happened. Yeah.
Anyway, let's get to spoilers for long legs starting right now. All right, let's
Can
talk
I talk
about
about a couple? Can I talk
yeah,
about some things that I couldn't really mention in my
yeah,
review?
please.
Specifically, once they were like, "Oh, she's a little bit psychic," and then they do the psychic tests, and then the FBI is like, "Oh, she's a little bit psychic," and then they treat it seriously. Like Blair Underwood's character is like a little skeptical, but he's also like, "I don't know how the hell you did that."
Yeah,
So clearly something is happening. I think that is the point where I was like, "Oh, you are doing something different. You're not just Seven or any of the like murder thrillers from the '90s or Silence or anything. Like this is the supernatural is a thing in this world, and they established that early on. And I think that for a lot of people, just from what I've read from chatter online, like either that'll bring you in or turn you off. And for me, that brought me in because we don't typically. I have to go to Japan. I have to go see Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Cure to get like really interesting mixtures of like procedural dramas and supernatural stuff. And I thought, oh, it's cool. He's actually
But is
doing it, and they
anything
set
done
up
with
really
it?
well.
yeah.
Do they
That's
do?
that's the thing is I thought the opening of this movie
Yeah,
was awesome. Like the first 10-15 minutes was awesome. Like
her going to the house with the guy,
she
and the
goes to the
guy's
house with
like,
the guy gets shot,
Incredible.
like all the
It's
well, the
plastic.
guy's looking at her is like, I don't know if you can even get out of this car. I'm gonna take care of this, and
Right.
she's like, yeah.
The
And then
I
she
plastic
thought
wrap-
I was gonna love that
Yeah.
this movie
Yeah.
at
the
that
plastic
point.
wrap and her like going with the plastic wrap and everything.
Incredible.
Then she gets tested for being a psychic. That part's cool too. I'm like, oh man, like
oh man,
this movie has
that's some
earned
real
a ton
straight
of
up control type
Yes.
stuff
right
too. Yeah.
control or cells interlinked from Blade Runner kind of style thing. Like
Yeah.
very
Mhm.
cool stuff. And then so I'm drawn into the movie, and
Same.
then I kind of agree with Jeff Kanata. Nothing is really done with the psychic stuff. Like,
Well, I mean, the
it's
psychic stuff, it does kind of lead her. Like that's the thing where it could then be kind of a crutch because it does lead her down certain avenues, like in terms of like who she's following, like how she deconstructs the actual letters and things. Like it
I
helps
just
her in that way, but it is all very convenient. So
well, first of
yeah.
all, like as far as I can tell, and maybe I'm wrong
Mhm.
about this, but like nothing that happens in the rest of the movie requires psychic abilities. Like,
Agreed.
so it's like, what is the point of even introducing that? And it feels like a lot of stuff in the movie is like that, where
Yep.
they introduce this. So they introduce this like cipher, like this code,
Mhm.
and it's like she just solves it. They don't even.
You can-
They literally don't even explain.
I mean,
And
There's
they
not,
don't
kind
there's
of
not
to
even
it.
a 1-minute scene where they explain like what the code was. It's like okay,
that's how I
just-
feel like
yeah.
there's all these chunks that are like
Yeah.
a brainstormed idea for a
Right.
horror movie that they just plop in there And but like you could remove them whole cloth, and you could remove the psychic thing whole cloth, and it wouldn't change anything.
You could remove the cipher thing. Like
yes.
he could have just written actual letters. It doesn't matter. You know,
it
like
doesn't matter. His whole character could be removed. Like the point.
I don't know about that.
The biggest part of the movie is that her mom had to do shit for the devil.
Yes.
This guy making dolls? What is that? Like another thing that could be removed whole cloth from the movie.
He's sort of like a conduit for the thing. Again, like this is more vibes than the actual plot machinations. I disagree though that you could take this character out and like, you could streamline the plot. You could streamline the plot even more. The devil talks to the mom. That's not interesting. That's not fun. I think like what is getting me into this is
I'm not
just
asking for streamline. I'm asking for making it essential. Sorry, go ahead.
Let Devindra finish. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. That sounds like a synonym to me, Jeff. Like it just sounds like we don't get the full explanation for like why this guy is somehow a conduit to the devil. But I was like kind of like, right, you see who he is. He is like somebody who is like into like punk, like glam rock type stuff. Like it almost feels, and the movie does not explain this, but it almost feels as if somebody was into Satanism so hard he actually succeeded, and the devil's like, "All right, I got one, I got a conduit," and then he looks at the guy.
Okay, yeah, if you wanted it that bad,
and he looks at the guy, is like, "Oh, God damn it, this is the guy. This is my window into the world. Okay, I guess I'm working with this." It doesn't feel like purposeful, but it feels like, yes, he was somebody who was worshiping Satan and somehow made this connection and is doing this whole thing to serve the devil. The thing with the mom, again, I don't like how that was explained. I think the reveal is kind of interesting because something's up with that character because she's a little weird, and she kept saying like, "Oh, you were allowed to grow up," and that really does get you into thinking about like what she really means by that. I didn't need the whole explanation, like the storybook explanation at the end of exactly what the mom did and the deal and everything. What I would have liked is the scene where the mom is there begging for her daughter's life.
Yes.
Basically being like, "Hey, okay, I don't know what's happening here, but I will do whatever you want." Like her doing that rather than explaining that. That's where the ending kind of lost me. I actually think the very final scene in Blair Underwood's house, like that stuff is kind of great for me. Even if it leaves off a little open-ended, but it's the fact that they didn't show us the thing that could be really compelling about the mom that kind of bugs me. That's my big knock against the movie. But like you guys are saying, she didn't use the psychic stuff. I'm pretty sure looking at the cinematic language of the thing, those, whatever the psychic abilities, which it turns out is the devil on her shoulder almost, or something like that, is directing her to helping to decipher the letter, like to find the biblical references and to do all this.
Yeah, you could make the argument.
That is the thing.
Yeah,
that
you
deconstructs.
Yeah.
Yes.
The psychic ability helps her decode the cipher. That's I can accept that. That's fine. All right. Anyway, all that said, Jeff, you clearly have a lot to say. So go
yes. The central dynamic between a mom who agrees to do the worst things ever to save her daughter is a compelling concept. That is drama, right? At no point does this movie reap the rewards of that premise. At no point does it have a moment. I'm glad you agreed that. I'm just reiterating basically what you're saying, but I want to do it with more emphasis. At no point do we have any moment where the mom and daughter have to, like, there's no reckoning of, I did all this for you.
Right. Yeah.
And that I think as an audience member, that payoff is kind of necessary for me. Like what I want to see is, oh my gosh, the reveal is you have been living in this hellish existence of murdering people, or, assisting in the murder of innocent people so that your precious child can live. And the movie does nothing with it. Nothing. That drama is not mined at all. And in fact, it kind of doesn't even make any sense. As I laid in my bed angry at this movie, like the rules that it establishes, like why does that woman get that bargain with the devil and all the other people don't?
Yeah.
Like I need the movie to sort of explain. I hate to use that
Yeah.
word, but like
There are a lot of unanswered questions in the movie.
it's
Now,
not, but it's not like
Yeah.
fun unanswered questions. It's
I agree.
unsatisfying
I agree.
unanswered
I agree.
questions.
And what
Yeah.
it does explain, we get. You don't need to tell me she made this deal. Like, you can actually do that without the narration, without the voiceover, just showing her
Agreed.
like a Shyamalan movie or something, of just like a character going through a series of steps, her appearing at a house, her sitting as the massacre happens. Like, that's all you need.
Oh yeah,
You didn't
and
need the
showing
explanation.
love for her child. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
key element here, the human element, the drama is she's doing these horrible things for her
Mhm.
kid, but we
Mhm.
never get that DNA. We never get
Mhm.
that connective tissue.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree that part is not really paid off particularly well. And I think there's just, as you said, a lot of open questions. Oh, by the way, one like possible explanation to answer your question, Jeff, is there's no dad in the picture.
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
all the other families had dads, so maybe he comes upon this family that has no dad. He's like, "Oh, here's a situation.
Okay.
Who's gonna kill the wife
American
and the daughter?"
80s, broken families, can't even devil worship
like,
properly over
okay.
here.
You had to supply
Yes.
that as the audience member though, and like if there had just, I'm happy making the connective leap if you're
Right.
giving me something. Like I don't think there's enough there for you to make that particular leap. Maybe that's what the filmmaker intended.
I think the filmmaker, by the way, intends, just to be clear, I think the filmmaker intends on you needing to answer at least some questions yourself.
Yes.
At
And
the end
I
of this
like
movie,
that.
right?
I'm not.
Yeah.
I love me doing, but I feel like this movie is just, again, throwing spaghetti at a wall and going, make pasta. And I'm like, I need you to at least boil the water, buddy. Come on.
I think like some things you're asking, like the mother showing love for the daughter. Okay, I mean, that would have been nice to see maybe more of in flashbacks, but the characters as we see them in the modern day, it does kind of make sense that the mom is this weird broken shell of a person. It also explains like what is the deal with Micah Monroe's character, where she almost seems like a person separated from humanity. Like her very existence seems very difficult. It's because like you've been living with like the devil on your shoulder or something your entire life. Like something has kept you out of our world. I don't know. I found those things compelling.
She doesn't pass the background check to get into the FBI. Not with that mom. Sorry.
I'm just gonna put this out. I'm just gonna put this out there, guys.
Mhm.
If a strange woman showed up at my door and said, "I have a life-size gift for you from the church," I would say, "Please get off my property."
Yeah.
I don't know.
Accept dolls from strangers, ladies and gentlemen.
You have a gift? In that case, come right in, please. Like, I don't know that people would have that reaction.
The doll thing is another example to me of just this idea that shows up in the movie and is like, well, do something with that. Do anything with that. It feels like part of a different movie that gets thrown in, like all these disparate elements that are just a jumble of nonsense, like this pastiche that's being created.
Like the doll thing, I kind of, again, not fully explained, but I kind of liked it because it's so damn creepy. That first reveal where they pull it out and it's just like
that
fetal
was nice.
position. You pull it up.
That's a cool
and then
scene.
you're sitting there waiting. It's like, the eyes are going to pop open. Something's going to happen with that doll. And then I love the whole conversation. Like they have the doll laid out like on an autopsy table, basically. And I love the technician who's just like, I think he was saying the name of my ex-wife, but that couldn't be. He's not talking. Just like the little bits of like supernatural evil, like creeping out. Like that's all I needed. I didn't need like a full explanation of it. What is the doll, the thing, and the doll seems like it's like something. That is essentially the connection to the devil or something. We don't know how all that works, unfortunately. Yeah.
I don't think the doll stuff is explained very well. I don't think the steel ball is explained very well. Like, what does that do? How does that work? And when they're shooting the steel ball, is that freeing Micah Monroe? Is that damaging her?
It does seem. I like that the ball gets shot and then like something
she
kind of
passes
dissipates from her own head. Yeah,
like something. But it doesn't. The movie does not explain that at all.
No, not at all.
And then so you have to like kind of come to your conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the ending of the movie, people have had some real debates about what actually went on. Like I read a piece, I think at Vulture, that was like, she tries to kill the doll at the end and she's unable to, showing that she is now evil.
I think it was more like her gun didn't have bullets or something. It seemed like she was trying and we were hearing clicks.
That was my sense. Was she attempted to?
Yeah.
But she didn't. I don't think she used 6 bullets by then. So like something is preventing the thing from showing up. Anyway, at Den of Geek, they did an interview with Osgood Perkins, and he talks about the ending of this movie. So the film concludes with Ruth breathlessly telling her daughter that they shall writhe in the fires of hell unless every member of the Carter family, including a little girl, dies as some kind of satanic sacrifice.
Mhm.
Instead, Lee shoots her mother in the head and flees the house. It's a grim denouement that might ask if Lee is damned as well. And then he quotes Osgood Perkins. I think the ending for her is about as bad as it could have turned out.
Uh-huh.
Shooting her mom in the head, that's about as bad a day as a person can have. So I think ultimately one could say that the entire movement of the movie, or the entire movement of all of Longlegs' crime, starting from crime number 1 all the way to the Carter family, it's all about getting this poor girl to a place where she shoots her mom in the head. Like, that's the kind of flourish. The devil's, yup, I did that, end quote. Let me just tell you, this is one of those things where I read it and I was like, I actually think less of the movie after reading this. Where I'm like, oh, that was what I was supposed to take away from that, because that's not what I was thinking of at the end of the movie. I wasn't thinking of, oh wow, I guess the devil actually did win because she had to shoot her mom in the head. That's not what I was thinking. I was thinking, how the hell does any of this work? Like, I was thinking, like, how is this? Like, what is even literally happening in the final shot of the movie? Like, that's what I was thinking. And so the fact that he thought that should be my takeaway was like,
I mean, it's
this
potential.
movie fundamentally did not achieve
his
what
thinking that she is basically fucked is, I think like the ultimate takeaway. Like, that's the thing. Like, yes, she kills her mom. That's pretty bad. I'm not gonna trace like the same line he did, but essentially the rules that they set up is like, you're damned. Your soul is damned. She tries to defeat the doll. She can't. She takes the girl and she's like, let's get the fuck out. That's basically it. Like, it reminds me a bit of like Drag Me to Hell and the ending of Drag Me to Hell, but we don't see that, right? Except this one's like, oh no, she knows she's screwed. It's not like a happy, like, we did it, we figured it all out. This is more like this character knows they're doomed, and that's it. End movie.
I will agree with you that it is not a triumphant ending. That part I agree with you, but I think like everything else about, like, she knows she's screwed, whatever. Like, I think that is completely open to interpretation based off what we are shown.
If she believes her mom or not, but given the like many murders that we see, that something weird was happening, like, I think she assumes something's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
Also, did either of you at any point, well, not at any point, the moment that Blair Underwood is like, hey, come meet my family, I was like, well, I know what's happening there.
Oh yeah, most definitely. This movie has like 10 characters, and you know what's going to happen with
I watched this movie with my wife, and she said the longer we spend with Blair Underwood's daughter, the worse it's going to get for that character. Basically,
I did like that line though, where he's like, "You want to come in and meet my family?" And she goes, "Do I have to?" I thought that was pretty funny.
And he says,
"This movie is funny. This movie is funny at times." By the way, I love the very final bit. Blair Underwood, once he is possessed, and he's like, I think the wife is like, "We'll be right back," and he's like, "No, I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
You'll be in the kitchen."
Which, by the way. Then, like, go to the kitchen. Like, I know your mom's out here, but maybe go to the kitchen and stop Blair Underwood from murdering his wife.
I mean, it's true. It's true. There's a lot of like, she is like that is like a weird standoff of just like, the doll is there, she's there with the gun, your mom is there, Blair Underwood is fully possessed. So what do you do? Do you shoot him now to save the wife? And it is a weird thing.
Eventually, it's like, that
she
was
shoots him eventually.
A little late.
I do feel like. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that character, you know, but
there's a scene.
There's a really tense moment.
Mm-hmm. I will talk about this show on a later filmcast, but I watched Sausage Party Foodtopia, and essentially like what the universe of that movie or show supposes is like, what if Toy Story was real but for food? Like, what would be the implications of that? And essentially, like, humans need to eat food to live, but what if all food was sentient, right? Like,
I think that's called animals.
At one point, there's a human who's held hostage, and he needs to like drink water to survive, and it's like, oh, you can't drink water, like, because like water bottles are alive in the Sausage Party universe, and it's like, and then the guy's asking like, so like, is the water the thing that's alive, or is it the bottle itself, or like, you know? And that's kind of my question. He's kind of musing like about the implications of the world. He's like, is the water is the thing that's sentient, or is it the bottle, or is it the fact that they're both combined that makes them a thing?
I was tempted to watch that show, David. You're making me want to watch it.
Oh, I like it a lot. Anyway,
okay, good.
Same thing about this movie. About like, so is it the steel ball that is the conduit for the devil's powers, or is
I feel like the steel ball is the
or
big
is it
thing.
the doll itself, or is
the
it the fact
guy.
that Nicolas Cage is making it, or is it all three combined? You know, and the movie's just not interested in answering any of those questions.
I mean, it's from what we see, the doll is a vessel for the steel thing, and when the steel thing gets shot, whatever connection it has over you as a child is gone. So
I feel like
that's what
William
we see.
Shatner in Star Trek V. Like, why does God need a starship? It's like, why does the devil need a freaking
I didn't make the plan.
steel ball and the doll and all that shit? Like,
if you need to get the ball to the person, there's easier ways than building a life-size creepo doll that most people would be like, no, thank you.
The devil's like, hey, I have a flair for the theatrical, and I need to. Also, one last thing I do want to shout out though. Kiernan Shipka is in this movie. She plays
amazing
Carrie Ann.
Scene. What a scene!
She is more scary in this movie than Nicolas Cage is, right? And like, it's an extremely understated performance. She plays one of the Longlegs' former victims, basically.
The only survivor.
The only survivor.
The only one.
Yeah. And she's in the movie for like 5 minutes. She's awesome. And just wanted to shout out, like, that is the type of performance that I think is more effective in a movie like this. And also, like, it's just so weird. Like, Nicolas Cage's thing feels like it's from a different movie in this thing.
It does, but at the same time, I'm like, it's interesting because it's not like it's not like we've ever seen this before. We've seen the quiet, soft-spoken villain. We have not seen the person who is like, his brain has been cooked on acid or something, and he's way too into glam rock, but also Satan. Also, Satan is there, and like, just having that character again. I would love like a B-side where you just see the actual devil be like, I need a better conduit in the sky.
I want the movie about Longlegs. Like, give me a movie that's actually about Longlegs, because Longlegs is a side character in this movie.
Yeah,
it's not the most important part. He kills himself halfway through. Mm-hmm. Like, it's
a very like Hannibal Lecter type of thing, right? Hannibal Lecter is still a side character in that movie. Technically,
you're right. Yeah. But I honestly would have much preferred the sort of black phone version, where instead of that character, we get this one. You know, like I don't know. Even though I agree,
I would love to see that too. I would love to see that too. But in terms of what we got, like, it's not. I wouldn't call his thing scary, but man, it's disconcerting.
Yes,
it's disorienting.
Yes,
if that person came up to you in real life, like, I know, Dave, you're a man of the people, but you also try to avoid a lot of the people. That person comes up to your child, you're like, what is happening here? I think that is scary. And it's specifically that character approaching children, which is the terrifying thing, which is why I think the opening scene is like kind of brilliant about it. Like, that character working with adults, less compelling. That's why he's not the one going to the door, because nobody's going to open the door for that weirdo, you know? But whatever he's doing with the kids is like freaking me the hell out.
It is funny that the devil's like, okay, I got this guy. He can do whatever I want. It's like, I'm going to need somebody else.
I need help.
I really need a second person for this one.
Who's number 2 in line?
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, fun conversation, guys. Obviously, wide variety of opinions here on the podcast. But even though I didn't like the movie very much, I still got some stuff out of it. And I'm glad Devindra loved it.
Can I ask you guys this, though? Did you appreciate that? Like, this is very much the 90s vibes as a movie, right? Like, Bill Clinton is right behind Blair Underwood in The Office. Like, it does feel like, remember like all the Morgan Freeman movies? Remember like Seven? Remember
Ashley Judd's?
All the Ashley Judds. It did feel like, we were back here again. That kind of, I also kind of just felt like it had like a really interesting feeling. Like we were just talking about It Follows. No cell phone world, you know, there are phones. There is like, there's not really internet either. It's just like very basic technology. And it felt really interesting being back in that sort of world and vibe. I definitely got a lot of like X-Files stuff going into this.
A couple things. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Just real quick. That's what, when Dave brought up that quote from the director, it was like, oh, well, like just a complete lift of Seven. It's just the end of Seven. Like, look,
Right.
You're forced
Yeah.
to do the thing. All of this was machinations to get you to this one moment where you have to get out of the car and shoot it in the head. You know well, that's a different movie. But you know,
but you know, in my opinion, doesn't work nearly as well as the ending of that movie. Right?
Agreed.
First of all, yes, it got some '90s vibes. People didn't have cell phones, right? And so that was good. Bizarrely, like a lot of the cars look like they were from the '70s in this
Well,
movie.
that was, if you recall, there were a lot of old cars around in the 90s too.
I guess. I mean,
if you go back and look at footage of like home video footage, like
Yeah.
people have kept their cars from the 70s and 80s into the
Yeah.
90s too. Like you're right, there were
My
a lot
favorite-
of old cars in this
But
one.
the best part of the movie is when there's a flashback in the movie, and to
Yeah.
denote that they're in the '70s, somebody's hanging up a huge picture of Richard Nixon on the wall.
Yes, yes.
It's like we all know we're all hanging up pictures
We're all
of
hanging
presidents on the wall.
And there's
that's how you
Reagan.
know.
There's Reagan in another scene too, like in another flashback to one of the families. So like, there's, yeah, I found it compelling.
At the end of the day, it is really impressive that Osgood Perkins made a movie. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.